Oh, it's so great to be back. So, yes, I'm Reverend Elizabeth Rowley Hogue, and so I'm so happy to be here today.
Yes.
You know, um, I came across a quote this week, and I knew I had to use it. I don't know how relevant it is to my talk, but it wanted to be said. So, so I'm going to share it here, and it's actually something that Hafez said, and it is that you are a divine elephant with amnesia trying to live in an ant hole. I love that quote. So my translation of that is that you are a divine being of light and love, sparkly and magnificent, amazing, wonderful, and fantabulously awesome. You're a mighty money magnet, healthy, wealthy, wise, generous, but you forgot who you are and are living in some other way. That you have been trained maybe to think that you are, but really you're not that at all. So, just like an elephant with amnesia who is trying to live in an ant hole. Now, think about that. An elephant in an ant hole, that's got to be uncomfortable, right? What? And so, this quote just really spoke to me. So, I invite you to consider what your interpretation of that is, like where in your life have you forgotten who you are? And are trying to live in an ant hole, but you're an elephant, right? So, I mean, there's so much depth in that. Like it doesn't serve us to play small. I think we get into our comfort zones. At least I know I do, and and even if it's a comfort zone, but it's not really comfortable. Maybe it's just like the routine. It's like it's just what I do, and so keep doing it, and then continue to feel like a level of constriction that is uncomfortable, but not in a good way, right? You hear a lot of times, "Oh, get comfortable with being uncomfortable," but not like that because like an elephant in an anthole, that's just ridiculous. So anyway, it doesn't serve you or me or the world for us to play small. So let's be all that we came here to be. And now, what I wanted to talk to you about today, the topic is Actionize, and and so it's all about taking action because I think sometimes we get stuck and we might have ideas or inspiration, but we're not taking action on them. And usually, when that happens, it's about fear. So maybe we don't think we're capable of doing what needs to be done, or perhaps we believe it when someone says, "Oh, that can't be done. You can't do that. That's not possible." And we feel inspired and we plant the seed of the idea into our minds, but then we pull it up before it has any time to take root in our life. Can anyone relate to that? Has that ever happened to you, right? So maybe we're believing more in our limitations than in our inspirations, but the truth is that all of us experience fear, and and no one has ever succeeded at something new without experiencing a little fear. But the key really is to overcome that fear and turn it into a stepping stone. So you've decided on something that you want to experience, you want to co create in your life, and then fear comes along and rears its ugly head. So, what do? You can look right at it and say, I know what you are, and tell yourself, hey, there's something in me that's greater than this fear, and I can move past it. And so, I love that, and I love a story that I heard about a young Native American man who went to his chief because it was time for him to go out on a vision quest, and he was frightened. And he actually has to leave the village and go out into strange surroundings where there could be bears and other wild animals that might attack him. And he admits to the chief that, "Hey, I'm really scared and I I want to do this vision quest, but I don't know. It's like there are these two dogs inside of me and they're fighting. There's one who says I can, and then there's one who says I can't. And they're fighting and fighting, and I'm frightened and confused. What should I do? And the chief very gently puts his hand on the young brave soldier or soldier and puts his hand on his shoulder and looks him in the eye and says, "The one who says you can will win." And the boy responds, "Well, how do you know that?" And the chief replies, "Because that is the one you will feed. The one that you feed will win." So there's always one that you feed and one that you starve. And I know there are different variations of this story, but the point being that when we have a vision and we know this is the thing that we're being called into and that we're ready to step into, and there is that sense of fear, we can make that conscious choice. Hey, I'm going to feed my faith and starve my fear. I'm going to feed my trust in the divine and allow that to be the thing that moves me forward. And so I really love that story. And now coming back to Actionize, that's that fear can stop us, right? Have any of you been like so thrilled and excited or eager with joyful anticipation about something that some seed that dropped into your mind and you knew it was a divine calling, and yet you had this experience of fear and so you stopped yourself, or the stars aren't in perfect alignment and the moon isn't just quite right and the comets are are not, going in the right direction, or or whatever, right? Or the tarot cards, it's not in the cards right now. And so you talk yourself out of it. I know I've done that. And then, the thing that happens though is it comes back up, doesn't it? The calling won't go away. The calling will continue to come back up. And at some point, we're going to have to absolutely trust and take that step, because I think we can really do it once we get 100% that we can't fail. We cannot fail. We're only growing and learning and evolving and constantly becoming more of who we came here to be. So, you, my friends, you can't fail. It's impossible. It's totally impossible to be a failure. You're learning and growing and finding out maybe what doesn't work or what works better or best. I think it was Thomas Edison who said, "I have not failed. I've only found 10,000 ways that do not work." I love that. It's so brilliant. Now, um, now think about your invisible power for a moment. So, in our community at Awakening Ways, we are reading this book by Genevieve Barand. I don't think you can see that but anyway, it's called Your Invisible Power, and it's really good. And so I highly recommend this book. It's 90 pages. These are my favorite books, the short ones, and packed with a powerful recipe to create in your life. And so, your invisible power is everywhere. We know that there's one presence, one power, one life, one source. And in physics, they talk about the non local field or string theory, which tells us what looks like space between us and the wall. Between you and me, what looks like emptiness is actually solid, and that it's filled with these dancing wavelengths of filaments of light and wavelengths of possibility. And it's filled with what Wallace Wattles in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, calls a thinking stuff. Someone else called it spiritual protoplasm, but it's like thinking of that stuff that's filling the entire space, and it is penetrating and permeating the inner spaces of the entire universe. And now we have several wavelengths of possibility that have been woven together to actually form a thing, and this thing is called a thought. And now these thoughts are coming out to you from me. And so think about this. A thought impressed into this substance is like putting your fist into Play Doh or molding or creating something with aluminum foil it leaves an impression, in other words. Do you guys remember those toys? They were like about that kind of rectangular, and they had all these pins in them, and you put your hand in, and out the other side would pop the hand impression. It's like that. So our thoughts are like uh, pushing into form, into this substance that's permeating everything. And so that's so powerful. So the thought that is impressed into this substance reveals itself as the thing impressed. So what you're thinking about consistently is creating your experience. And so, as divine elephants, we can remember that we're not ants, and we and so we don't need to live in that ant hole, but we have come here to be all that we can be, and we have the power within us. It's this invisible power, but it's omnipresent and everywhere. And so I love what Neville Goddard said, that the great secret is a controlled imagination and a well sustained attention, firmly and repeatedly focused on the feeling of the wish fulfilled until it fills the mind and crowds all other ideas out of consciousness. Wow. And so there's a lot to be said about what you are dwelling upon. What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about on a regular basis? And what are the things that are kind of cropping up to try to interfere with what you are thinking about? Just you've heard it said, what you think about, you bring about, or if the mind can conceive it, uh, you can do it, and all of that, right? So there's a Japanese proverb that says, vision without action is a daydream, and action without vision is a nightmare. I've also heard that inspiration without action is entertainment. And so sometimes we get this divine inspiration, but we don't act on it. And so, what would it be like for us to actually take action upon the divine inspiration that we are receiving? And so in Genevieve Beran's book, 90 pages, she talks about how she became Thomas Troward's only student. And so she really wanted to be his student. And he lived in England, and I don't recall where she lived. I think it was New York maybe. But she was she just saw the vision, and she knew that this was for her to be his student. And so she started writing him letters, and she had her friend help him out because she wanted to be more persuasive, and she felt like she wasn't able to be that persuasive. And so they were writing him letters, and he never responded. And so she kind of gave up, but she knew that she needed to get over there and try to set up a meeting with him over to London. And so she did some research and found that she was going to need $20,000 in order to get over there. And so every night before bed, she would count out 20 imaginary $1,000 bills in her mind. And while she was counting those $1,000 bills in her mind, she would say to herself, my mind is a center of divine operation. My mind is a center of divine operation, and counting those bills. And then she would go to the same thing in the morning, counting the bills, counting the bills. And she continued with this, and in about 6 weeks, she had the $20,000 in her bank account. And so she would also envision herself walking on the boat. She imagined having purchased the ticket for the steamer and then walking on the ship's deck, traveling all the way across the world practically. And so she finally ended up there, and she got to London and was still trying to get in touch with Troward, and he finally responded and said, "Oh yes, I would be happy to meet with you." And so she showed up at his place, I think with her friend, and they appeared, and he was so wonderful for her to talk to, and he was very open, and shared all kinds of wonderful things with her, but never once did he mention this possibility of her being his student. And now he had replied previously that I don't take students because I don't have the proper time to devote to independent individual pupils, right? And so she tried to ask him again as she was walking out the door and leaving, and he said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen right now, but here's a few books that you can read, and those will help you." And so she declined to be discouraged, though. She absolutely declined to be discouraged, and meaning that she continued. And he said, "Well, maybe when you get to Paris, you can send me some letters and we'll communicate that way. And maybe this will work out at some other time, but not right now." And so she didn't hesitate. As soon as she got to Paris, she wrote him a letter and they were communicating back and forth. And eventually, at some point, she said she received a letter from him, and it had the following question. Pulling it up here. Where's the question? The question was, what do you suppose is the meaning of this verse in the 21st chapter of Revelation? And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with the reed 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are all equal. Now, as soon as she saw that question, what does she think it means? She knew that this was her chance. If she could answer this question, she would be his student, his one and only ever student. And so she went on a journey. She started following these spiritual breadcrumbs and she went from bookstore to bookstore and somehow she found or met up with an astrologer or astrology professor, and she wanted to have a reading with the astrology professor, which was kind of awkward because he didn't really do readings, but she ended up arranging this time to be with him. And he said to her when they met that, "Hey, it doesn't seem like you really want to have a horoscope reading here. So what's going on?" And she said, "Well, I have this question." And so she presented the question from Troward, and the professor knew the answer, and he said, "The city signifies the truth, and the truth is non-invertible. Every side from which you approach it is exactly the same." And so she took that information and wrote it down and immediately sent a letter off to Thomas Troward, and Thomas Troward responded and said, "Thank you. I'm doing these lectures here, and you should come to them. And then after that, you can be my student." And so, wow, right? That's so wonderful. And all from like back in New York. And it was just this idea that dropped into her mind. And so the point of this is that we can do, be, or have anything that we want. And the calling for us is to feed our faith and feed our trust and allow the fear to starve and also take action. We've got to take action. When something comes up, we don't want to sit on it for like weeks and months. We want to go for it, right? We don't have anything to lose. We only have gains to make. So, my mind is a center of divine operation. Now, I have one last thing. I think my 20 minutes are up, but I have one last thing to share, which is, how many of you remember the cartoon that had the Wonder Twins in it? Anybody? No? Nobody remembers that? Well, there were these two extraterrestrial twins, one male, one female, and one was named Zan and one was named Jaina. And oh, and Dave's a twin, yeah. And so in the cartoon, one of them can transform into any animal and the other can become water in any state. And so I thought, let's create a new version and assign the Wonder Twins the power to create whatever they want for themselves and their lives because we can. And because we can, and so we will. And so this isn't going to work for us on Zoom, but you can try this at home, maybe with your loved ones or with a friend, and it's putting your fists together, and they would go like, Wonder Twin powers activate, only to each other, not to themselves, right? Wonder Twin powers activate, form of, and the other person says shape of, and then consider what action needs to be taken. And so, one could be Wonder Twin powers activate, form of perfect, vibrant health, or shape of a closer or deeper relationship with the divine, form of peace on the planet, or shape of $6,000 so I can go to Bali, whatever it is, right? We have this invisible power within us, and we can use it, and we are called to use it. And so this week you might ask yourself, where in my life have I forgotten who I am and am trying to live in an anthole? And number two, what is an action I can take this week to move me in the direction of my dreams? And then number three, find a friend who can be your wonder twin and assist you in activating your invisible power, which is the non-invertible truth that I spoke of. It's the same truth no matter how you approach it. So I like to close with a little prayer. If you'll join me in turning your attention inward and returning to that beautiful, expansive space within. This is the space where I know and remember that spirit is all that there is, and it is all that there ever was, and it's all that there ever will be. And I'm so grateful in this moment to have this opportunity to connect with the divine consciously. And as I do so, I begin to identify with it. And there is a merging that takes place. And then I find myself kind of like I've gone through a portal and I've entered the portal of absolute truth. And so in absolute truth, I can relax. I can let go, surrender, and just be. And know that I am so loved and so cared for by spirit. And this is the place where I am fed and welcomed, and I feel that sense of security and safety. And then when it's time, spirit calls me into action. And I know that for each one of us, whatever that thing is that we've wanted to activate in our lives, whatever that dream is, I know that today we are one step closer to crossing the threshold into living the dream, living the life that we would love to live. And many of us are already living the life we love. And I know that it can expand and grow and be even more magnificent than you could have ever imagined. And so, with great gratitude, I release this prayer knowing it is so, and so it is. Mhm.
You can spend your whole life building something from nothing. One storm can come and blow it all away. Build it anyway. You can chase a dream that seems so out of reach, and you know it might not ever come your way. Dream it anyway. 'Cause God is great sometimes life ain't good, and when I pray, doesn't always turn out like I think it should, but I do it anyway. I do it anyway. This world's gone crazy, and it's hard to believe that tomorrow will be better than today. Believe it anyway. You can love someone with all your heart for all the right reasons, and in a moment they can choose to walk away. Love them anyway. 'Cause God is great, and sometimes life ain't good, and when I pray, doesn't always turn out like I think it should, but I do it anyway. Oh, I do it anyway. You can pour your soul out singing a song you believe in, that tomorrow they'll forget you ever sang. Sing it anyway. Sing it anyway. I'll sing, I'll dream, I love, I'm gonna love anyway. Gonna love anyway. Gonna do it anyway.